Hey folks, welcome back to the Cam Rogers Show, 10:15 on the East Coast. Cam Rogers alongside Jory Epstein. Jory, of course, a reporter for the Dallas Morning News. Jory, thanks so much for jumping on the program here. How we doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on, Cam. How are you doing today?
I am doing great, and of course, there's no shortage of things to talk about surrounding the Dallas Cowboys. Really, there never is, but of course, we have the Ezekiel Elliott situation, and I'm sure you've been on top of this story. In fact, the Dallas Morning News recently reporting that sources were telling you guys that Zeke and the NFL perhaps were discussing a settlement. I want to ask your thoughts on that story, and could you actually see that going down?
Yeah, our David Moore at the Dallas Morning News had reported that sources were telling him that Zeke's camp and the NFL's camp were talking about a settlement. I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's been going on for a long time, and the judges are saying that the NFL has had some issues maybe with fundamental fairness, which is a really important factor when they consider these cases. Zeke's camp, it's just been going on and on. He was suspended on Tuesday. He wasn't suspended on Wednesday. And I think when it comes down to it, the league and Zeke's camp are just going to have to decide what do they want, how long are they willing to let this drag on, and what's their end goal here.
I think drag on is the operative phrase because it leads me into this question here, Jory. Zeke, of course, good to go versus the Redskins in 2 weeks and then Sunday too. But this saga has gone on for a while, and I guess it kind of alludes to the whole court system and how it can kind of be messy and all that. But did you yourself actually expect this whole situation to go as long as it has?
I try not to expect anything when it comes to the NFL and their decisions because I think there's just so much unpredictability. But I think, Zeke was telling us on Wednesday after practice, the way he looks at it, he's trying to clear his name. He said, I don't want that label of abuser for me and for my family. So to him, it's not just about, okay, when am I going to be on the field? Obviously, that's important and he cares about his team, but he sees it as something more. And to the NFL, it's what they've been saying is, okay, they've got this collective bargaining agreement. It grants broad powers to Roger Goodell. At what point, if you start going through this court case and allowing players to delay their suspensions over and over again, does it start to take away power from the collective bargaining agreement that they did give Goodell? And so, you've got Tom Brady's case as a precedent, which is even more relevant now that they're back in New York courts in the Second Circuit where that case is precedent. But they're just going to have to decide what are they looking for, and at what point does this case do something? They had changed the personal conduct policy a couple years ago, and you've got this violation where now if you violate the NFL's personal conduct policy, it's baseline 6-game suspension. So this is kind of a test case in some ways of how are they going to enforce that.
I'll tell you what, Jory, my brain has been turning to mush right now because of hearing phrases like temporary restraining order and injunction and hearings. I don't know. I didn't get a law degree. This is like confusing me all. So we could be towards the end. We shall see. Of course, it is the NFL, so stay tuned for that. Let's talk about the football field, though. All right, so big game against the 49ers, an old rivalry, if you will, back in the 90s, etc. And I want to first ask you about Sean Lee. Seems to be the glue for that defense. Looks like he is good to go this Sunday. How important is he to that defense?
I think Sean Lee is so important to that defense and to that run defense. You saw the Rams come to town. Todd Gurley just gashed them. And, okay, it's Todd Gurley. He's one of the best backs in the league. But then you have Aaron Jones, a rookie out of UT El Paso, doing the same with the Packers. Someone like Jalen Smith at middle linebacker. Jalen was great in college, but he's still recovering, and to have him on the field for every snap, to have him being like the defensive quarterback at Mike linebacker, someone like Sean Lee in that veteran position can make a huge difference. And when you're playing a running back like Carlos Hyde that San Francisco has, that's what you're going to want this week.
And a lot of Cowboys fans hoping for Mr. Navarro Bowman to go on to AT&T Stadium and play for the Cowboys. That did not happen. But, of course, Sean Lee coming back, very important for them. I want to talk about the NFC East a little bit here. So the Cowboys sit at 2-3. Those are the facts, and the Eagles look pretty good right now too. So in terms of the Cowboys' playoff hopes, you hate to say must win at this early of a time in the season, but at 2-4, the Cowboys would be in a tough spot. Is this really a must win? Like, would they be out of playoff contention if they lost this week?
When you're looking at the playoff race right now, it's tough. Again, on one hand, the NFC is wide open. You've got players. Just even a couple weeks ago, the Chiefs were 5-0 after last night. They're 5-2. You've got someone like New York, who went on and started with 5 losses, and then they go and beat Denver, who the Cowboys couldn't beat because they have Janoris Jenkins and Landon Collins getting those interceptions. So, I mean, to me, it seems like anything could happen in the NFL in 2017. But on the other hand, the 49ers game this week is one of the last games where it's like, okay, the Cowboys are a better team, it seems. Now can they win? I mean, if not, you start going into that December schedule. You've got Oakland, you've got the Eagles on the road, you've got, I mean, Seattle's coming up on the schedule, Atlanta, the Chiefs. It's not going to be an easy schedule for this year. That's what happens when you go 13-3 in the NFL. They switch you around and they're giving you tough teams to play against. So I think the NFC East would be difficult for the Cowboys to win. So at this point, you really want to start getting in good position to get one of those wild cards.
And, of course, if you win your division the next year, usually you play those division winners across your respective conference. That's what's going on with the Cowboys this year. So, yes, indeed, they're 2-3, but a big game, of course, on Sunday. And I want to look at the offensive line right now. Got so much praise in 2016, and rightfully so. But right now, La'el Collins, Jonathan Cooper, not really getting it done on that front there, and it looks like Zeke's numbers are part of that kind of proof, if you will, that his numbers aren't as great as last year, too. So what do you think about the offensive line? Is it a long-term kind of concern for the Cowboys?
I mean, I don't know that I would put it as a long-term concern. I mean, you've got a few pro Bowlers on that line, and they are still a really talented line. And, I mean, when you think about, okay, Green Bay has got their left tackle and right tackle concussion and hamstring, the Cowboys are in a much better position with their offensive line than I think most teams in the league. But when you have someone like Ron Leary at left guard go to Denver in free agency, Doug Free, right tackle, for all his penalties, he was a really strong offensive line. He retired in the offseason. So I think when you get to this point, it's the offensive line. To me, I don't look at it so much as what's this one player doing wrong. I look at it as you've got a new unit trying to work together and figure out what they can do. And until those 5 players are really functioning as one offensive line and one collective unit, that's what's going to be a struggle. So, I mean, I think in the fourth quarter against Green Bay a couple weeks ago, right before the Cowboys bye, you saw that they still have that ability to really open up positions for Zeke, for Dak. I mean, you had that Zeke stretching out on 4th and 1 to convert when, I mean, they didn't have the aerial camera. They wouldn't have even been able to tell necessarily. And then you've got Dak running it in late for what seemed to be a game-winning touchdown, although with Aaron Rodgers, nothing is what it seems. I think that the offensive line is going to be fine, but like you said, it's a work in progress, and hopefully over this bye week they continue to gel and become a cohesive unit.
And, of course, Zach Martin, one of the better guards in the NFL. Ty Smith on that left side. We'll watch for him this weekend. He's been a little dinged up, but the offensive line certainly doing its job for the most part. I want to ask you about Dez Bryant here. We thought that maybe it was going to be his breakout game against Green Bay most recently where, heck, I could play corner for the Green Bay Packers on defense. Didn't exactly happen, so when is it going to happen, if at all, Jory? Are we going to get that Dez Bryant breakout game at some point, or is it just going to be kind of an off year for him?
I think it depends how you're defining a breakout game for Dez Bryant. I mean, if you look at the numbers, he's not one of the best receivers in the league right now, and I mean, that when they were opened up this season, I forget the exact number, but it was something like Dak and Dez were connecting on maybe 26% of targets. It wasn't looking good. I think on one hand, anytime you've got Dez on the field, it's easier for Jason Witten, it's easier for Cole Beasley. He really does do a good job spacing it out and making sure that the deep threat is there, but it seems like we've had plenty of games this year where he's been playing defensive back more and trying to break up interceptions than actually get those passes. So, I mean, this will be an interesting game and see what he can do, but I think that Dak Dez connection, we haven't seen it statistically get quite where the Cowboys would probably like to see it, and having as much of a diversified reception game as they can is going to keep helping them because Dez isn't really gelling. And, I mean, he hasn't had a lot of double coverage this season, and so I think that is interesting. But also, I mean, with Cole Beasley getting 2 touchdowns in the last game and Bryce Butler, and you've got a bunch of really good receivers on that team, and so I think the more they can keep defenses guessing of who is it going to go to Terrence Williams, is it going to go to Bryce Butler, get Dez involved a little bit, run it with Dak and Zeke, I think that diversity and that having so many offensive weapons is really what's going to be the Cowboys' strength.
And it's certainly important to note, too, Dez has faced his fair share of elite corners in Denver with Aqib Talib and Chris Harris, Janoris Jenkins with the New York Football Giants, etc. So perhaps a waiting game a little bit with Dak and Dez Bryant. But let me ask you about the defense overall. It's got its fair share of scrutiny, if you will. And look, the Dallas Cowboys defense last couple of years, it's been a conservative kind of zone type deal. But overall, I want to ask you, what is the major concern for you about that defense as we stand right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Last year, what helped the defense so much was that the running game was gelling and it kept the defense off the field. So, one, they were fresh when they were on the field, but also, I mean, that time of possession was huge for the Cowboys last year. So, I think that when Zeke's running game has been on and off depending on the game, you put that with Sean Lee's hamstring. I mean, as far as injury goes, when you think of J.J. Watt and Aaron Rodgers and Odell Beckham Jr., the Cowboys have been pretty lucky. But still, when you don't have your veteran, I mean, they say like Sean Lee, that veteran at Mike, that's the quarterback of your defense. When you lose your quarterback of your defense for a couple weeks to a hamstring injury, it's not going to go well. I think the secondary's also struggled. You've got Chidobe Awuzie with hamstring issues. Nolan Carroll had a concussion. They ended up releasing him. But I think one bright spot that is really exciting for Cowboys fans is Jordan Lewis, the third-round rookie out of Michigan, the corner. Mel Kiper put him on his top 10 rookie big board this week. And, I mean, he's got the pass breakups. He had an interception in his debut against Denver when he probably shouldn't have played yet, but with Cheeto and Nolan down, they went in. So I think that they have a lot of young potential on that defense, but their corners, I mean, you want stronger coverage, and that run defense is going to be really important, especially this week against Carlos Hyde.
It was a run defense that was pretty darn good last year, too. We'll see if they can kind of replicate that the rest of the season here in 2017. Shifting over to the Niners real quick, Jory. Of course, winless, but they've been competing this year. They got C.J. Beathard there at the quarterback position, now rookie out of Iowa. What do you expect out of the Niners this week? Maybe a little trickery, something like that? I mean, there's not a lot of tape on C.J. Beathard here.
There's not. I mean, out of Iowa, I think what's most interesting to me about them is they're the first NFL team in history to lose 5 consecutive games by 3 points or less. And when I hear that, I think, okay, you've got a team that is fired up. And so, yeah, I do think that the Cowboys have better weapons, and I would think they're the better team. But I think that, like, that momentum and psychology is so important in the game. And this team wants to get the win. This rookie quarterback wants to show. I also think, and you saw it with Dak Prescott last year, that anytime you've got a quarterback and you don't have a lot of film on them, it doesn't hurt. So I don't know. I mean, I'm excited to see. I think it'll be fun to see what this quarterback can do. And just like Dak was a great story last year, it'll be fun to see what Beathard can do with the team this year. And, I mean, his team seems to have a lot of confidence in it. Shanahan is really excited about what he can do. So I think that San Francisco isn't a bad team. Obviously, I don't think their record reflects what they're capable of.
It should be an interesting game, no doubt about it. All right, Jory, open up that crystal ball, if you will. Give me a prediction. Who's going to win Sunday? Give me a score if you're feeling it.
Yeah, I mean, this year, any prediction can be thrown out the window. I do think the Cowboys are going to pull it home, especially with Zeke on the field. So I'll say 30-24 Cowboys.
Okay, bit of a shootout in the Bay Area, ladies and gentlemen. There you have it. You've heard it from the woman herself, Jory Epstein. Thanks so much for coming on the program. Of course, you can check her out on the Dallas Morning News. Jory, thanks so much for coming on, and let's chat again soon.
Thanks for having me, Cam. Have a great day.
All right, there she goes, Jory Epstein. Many thanks to her for coming on the show here on the Cam Rogers program.